entity exemplify maximal excellence rather than some other entity. The fact that this entity exemplifies maximal excellence is itself contingent. So there are multiple possible differences in the entities that exemplify maximal excellence. Perhaps that entity essentially incarnates as human, or perhaps they don't. Perhaps they essentially favor a group of humans, a particular group of humans, perhaps they don't. Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I mean, Plantinga can't just simply go ahead and say, that maximal excellence being exemplified is necessary. He has to also show that a specific individual entity, is necessary. Otherwise, that individual is in fact contingent. And it's widely known that concrete beings, concrete objects, have the property in which it appears that Leibniz's law of indiscernibles is false. I mean, imagine we had some duplicating machine where we had some chunk of matter and duplicated it. These two things are distinct, numerically distinct, and yet they share essential properties in common. Okay, and yet they're numerically distinct. They're distinct objects. And in the same sense, if we had a God here, then there's something individual about that. Okay, it's this entity as opposed to some other exemplification thereof. It's the fact that this entity exemplifies maximal excellence rather than some other entity. So we have here a specific individual. And this individual, the fact that this entity exemplified maximal excellence, is contingent. So even granting Plantinga's argument, it doesn't show that there's a necessary God at all. So, and this clearly conflicts with Anselmian theism, which tries to show that there is a necessary individual. So even granting Plantinga's argument, and therefore theism, you still wouldn't arrive at the conclusion of Anselmian theism at all. And so finally, I'd like to conclude by saying that his argument really just represents the pinnacle of all ontological arguments. And we find all the necessary advances that a defender of the ontological argument must make. Namely, the supposition that there necessarily being a God is possible. In other words, that there necessarily is a God. Unfortunately, even this argument fails to be persuasive, since it's question-begging, and moreover there's reason to suspect, in fact reason to reject, the idea of a necessary God. And finally, Plantinga's argument, at best establishes that necessarily there is a God, but not any particular individual. Any such individual would be contingent, since the fact that individual exemplifies maximal excellence is contingent. Hence, Plantinga's argument does not establish Anselmian theism, and given the previous remarks, let alone theism, nor its rational acceptability. I apologize for the somewhat rushed discussion that I just had here, but I hope you liked the video. Sorry, not the video, the speech, more or less. And I would really recommend that after listening to the video, I hope you've been following along with the blog post. It would also be good if you go back and read the blog post as well, because I really go into much more detail there, and you can reflect more on that blog post. This is the first discussion of natural theology, and I'm going to basically continue with my next paper and my next video, consequently, concerning the modal cosmological argument, as offered by Leibniz and championed by philosophers today like Alexander Pruss and Robert Kuhns. And I hope to get that done pretty soon, and hopefully you'll be able to see it perhaps within the next month or so. So, well, until next time, this is Rayndeon signing off.